This is kind of a semi-confusing topic, but I'm gonna make this a bit fast, so let's talk about waves first. The way waves travel is that there are a level of waves. One wave will spawn and do damage, and after that another wave will spawn in front of it and do more damage in an extra range. They don't travel in a linear version, rather they spawn one after another. You can see from this footage that the units dies in a group. It's more clear to see this from the Soul animation. We call each wave to be a level of wave, so the first shockwave would be a level 1 shockwave, the second a level 2, and so on. Now for waves range, it's essentially the same for cats and enemies. Level 1 shockwave is always longer than the rest of the shockwave. Level 2, 3 and so on always extends by 200 range, but level 1 shockwave is 332.5 range for cats and 467.5 for enemies. For example, Pigeon Disable, who has level 1 shockwave, reaches out to 467.5 range, while Toucan with level 2 shockwave reaches to 667.5 and Dober with level 3 reaches to 867.5. Now in this clip I have Octo who's going to take the initial attack from the Doge base, then we got Loincloth who stands at 350 range and Midsummer Cat who stands at 465 range, both in the range of the level 1 shockwave. Then we got Nyandam at 551 range who is in the range of level 2 shockwave. Cyberpunk who stands at 800 range due to LD inside the range of level 3, and finally Sniper the Heavy at 1000 range inside the range of a level 4 wave. As the Doge based attack, you can see that Midsummer and Loincloth dies together while the other dies one by one. I think the visual should be clear enough, so now let's move on to Wave Blocker. Now what the ability Wave Blocker does is that it cancels out Shockwave. It'll stop a certain level of Shockwave from damaging unit as well as stopping it from creating more waves. But when does a unit cancel out a wave? Looking at Eva 00 versus Hermit, you can see that 00 blocks the very first Shockwave, despite standing at 350 range. Level 1 Shockwave is already cancelled out. There's a theory that comes out from this observation where they conclude that Shockwave will stop once it reaches a unit's range. So 00, who has 350 range, can stop a wave at 350 range in front of him, while Octo will stop a wave when a wave reaches 140 range in front of him. I'm here to say that this is not the case. The way it works is that it'll cancel out the wave that hits the wave blocker's hitbox. Therefore, it cancels out any wave that hits the wave blocker, or at least is supposed to hit the wave blocker. Let us compare Eva 00, Cat Machine MK3 and Octopus, who stands at 350, 190 and 140 range respectively. By the range theory, should they stand at the same range, 00 would have blocked at least one wave farther than Octopus, since one wave is 200 range. Now let's look at this clip. As Kai triggers the wave, 00 when spawn will not move because of the Zojus in front of him, and he blocks the wave that is about to appear right next to the base. Keep that in mind. Moving on to Cat Machine with the same procedure, observe again as MK3 cancels out the exact same wave level that 00 cancels despite having lower range. But then here comes the interesting part. As I tried this experiment on Octopus, due to his low range, Octopus moves forward a tiny little bit when he was spawned as he doesn't have enough range to reach the Zojus. And this causes him to block one wave earlier than the rest. His movement certainly does not increase his reach farther than 350 range. Here's a side-by-side comparison on 00 MK3 on Octo's wave block. I think this should prove that wave block works by hitbox and not by range. Well, that should be all. Hopefully that's not confusing, but if it's still confusing and you have questions, then do ask it in the comments. That's all for now. See ya.